The 2024 NFL Draft Order is officially set for all of the non-playoff teams. Today we are going to be going through the entire first round and predicting exactly what those teams are going to do now that we know exactly what spot they are going to be picking in. Let's dive right into this, starting with the Chicago Bears. Of course, have that number one pick with the Carolina Panthers pick, and I do think they go with Caleb Williams out of USC. A lot of discussion about whether Drake Maye should be that pick, whether Justin Fields should remain the quarterback of the Chicago Bears, and I do think he has played better down the stretch, but ultimately you're going to reset your quarterback clock. You're going to get a franchise quarterback on a cheap rookie deal. If you stick with Fields, you're going to have to pay him. You're still pretty uncertain about what you have at that spot, so it just makes a lot of sense to trade Justin Fields, take Caleb Williams, reset your quarterback clock, and get a very, very high potential quarterback prospect in Caleb Williams, who has been projected as the number one pick for a couple of years now in this draft. Next, we have the Washington Commanders up, and you know they're going to go quarterback. Really, it doesn't seem like they are very in on Sam Howell anymore at this point. Jacoby Brissett has kind of outplayed him down the stretch of this year. I think they go back to the UNC quarterback well and select Drake Maye. He's my number one quarterback right now. It's very, very close, but I think that Maye just has fantastic accuracy, timing, great play within structure, as well as the ability to create with his legs, and has a dynamic arm as well. So definitely think that while Drake Maye is potentially going to be the second quarterback off the board, he's not really by any means a huge consolation prize. I think many teams may have him as QB1 on their board. Then at number 3, we have the New England Patriots, and really they missed out on those top two guys, but I don't think it means that they're not going to the quarterback well. I think Jayden Daniels has a good chance of being a top 5 pick. Daniels has really kind of come on late, won the Heisman Trophy, obviously. I think that was well-deserved. He's shown his ability as both a runner but also as a passer. He's very, very efficient as a passer, doesn't turn the ball over too much, attacks downfield, has pretty good play within structure, but really where he's super dynamic and super special is with his legs on the run. Definitely think that he would be somebody that you could certainly see sneaking into the top 10, top 5, maybe even top 3 of this draft. If both of those quarterbacks go and New England really doesn't want to roll into next year with a veteran option or Mac Jones on the roster, I think Jayden Daniels is going to have to be the pick for them there. At number 4, really easy pick, going to go Marvin Harrison Jr. I think that he's probably going to be the number 1 player on their board. I don't think they're going to be replacing Kyler Murray right now. At his price tag, it's just going to be hard to move him, and he's shown some good things this year when healthy, coming back from that injury. I definitely think getting him an elite number 1 wide receiver would really help him out and really potentially build the offense in a way that you could really be successful with Kyler Murray at quarterback. You obviously have built out some of your offensive line through the past couple of drafts, and you get that dynamic number 1 playmaker. I think that would be a great pick and a great scenario as well for the Cardinals. Next, we have the Chargers on the clock, and definitely think there's going to be some discussion about where they go with this pick. You could take a Malik Nabers, you could take a Brock Bowers, Rome Odunze, but I think they go with Joe Alt. There's kind of been a lot of discussion between him and Fashanu. I think that ultimately, though, you really can't go wrong with either one of them. They're both elite offensive tackle prospects, top 10 grades for sure. I'm going to have on both of them, so really don't think you could go wrong. One of them is going to probably slide over to right tackle because you already have Rashawn Slater, so maybe Alt is just a little bit more natural at that transition. He hasn't played right tackle before, but he just kind of has that frame, the coordination, everything that you would look for in a right tackle as well. So I think they'd be very happy with that. You've got to protect Justin Herbert. He's been injured too many times. He really hasn't been super successful with some of the talent around him, so you got to protect him as much as possible, give him time to use some of those playmakers that he has. Then the New York Giants at number 6. In a tough spot, 3 quarterbacks gone. You'd certainly like to take one, but it's going to be pretty tough if all 3 of those guys are gone. Going to go with Malik Nabers out of LSU. They had a lot of success going to the LSU wide receiver well in Odell Beckham Jr., and I think Malik Nabers could be a dynamic number 1 receiver like Beckham was for this Giants team. Nabers is just such a good athlete. He's so good at separating. He has great vertical speed, really, really good after the catch as well. So definitely think he would be a huge addition. Obviously sucks to not get a quarterback, but in this way, the board really just didn't fall kindly. No big trade-up options, so I think that the Giants settle for a really, really good number 1 wide receiver instead. Then at number 7, going to go with Fashanu at offensive tackle. You took Peter Skoronski last year. You desperately need tackle help. Petit Frere and Dillard really have not gotten the job done. Even when they're both healthy, they're really not super effective players anyway. So taking Fashanu, who's the best pure pass-protecting left tackle in this draft, in my opinion, I think you're really not going to get any major complaints about that. Maybe doesn't fit the prototype Mike Vrabel type, nasty, get after it in the running game type of offensive tackle, but I still think that Fashanu is a very clean prospect with a very, very high upside. He's somebody that really the Titans just can't afford to pass on at that number 7 spot. At number 8, we have the Atlanta Falcons. No more Arthur Smith. They just fired him. So I do think it will be interesting to see if they take a quarterback, maybe Michael Penix in this spot. I certainly think that's possible. But I don't think there'll be too much pressure necessarily on a new head coach to come in and win immediately. He wouldn't maybe want to take the 4th quarterback off the board with the 8th overall pick. Going to go with Dallas Turner out of Alabama in this spot. They have continued to need pass rushing help for many, many years. And I think that Dallas Turner is just a super athlete, has great speed and burst around the edge. He also can turn that into power. So I definitely think Turner is going to be a top 10 pick most likely in this draft, and I think the Falcons could certainly be a landing spot for him. Then at number 9, going to go with Rome Odunze, the receiver out of Washington for the Chicago Bears. You got Caleb Williams. You already have DJ Moore. Get him another weapon, a contested catch ball winner type in Rome Odunze. Really, really like Rome Odunze and what he has been for this Washington team as that number 1 go-get-it wide receiver. He's so dependable, has great ball tracking, really good route running, and yards after catch, size, speed, route running, all for his size is really, really impressive. He's that true X big body receiver that I don't think the Bears necessarily have. You put him, DJ Moore, Cole Kmet, some of the running backs in that room, along with Caleb Williams and a solid offensive line. I really think that's a pretty good environment for Caleb Williams to be successful. Then at number 10, we have the New York Jets. Tough because neither one of Fashanu or Alt fell to them, but I don't think that's incredibly likely either. I think you're going to have to decide whether you take a right tackle and just kind of figure things out, because the next best 3 offensive tackles on the board are all natural right tackles. Obviously, Elijah Vera Tucker is kind of that right tackle right now, but I think you just got to drop the talent and figure out your best 5 from there. Going to go with Taliese Fuaga out of Oregon State. This guy is just a mauler in the running game. He's a really, really solid pass protector as well. Has showed up well in big matchups this year, and I definitely think that the Jets just need that nastiness, that toughness on their front. Protect Aaron Rodgers for this potential last hurrah Super Bowl run. I think Fuaga would definitely be a huge piece in that. You just cannot keep neglecting this offensive line. Then at number 11, we have the Minnesota Vikings, and I think that Michael Penix is going to work his way into this conversation here. For the Vikings, you may move on from Kirk Cousins, and you need an answer at quarterback for the future. I think Penix could definitely be put in an environment with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hockenson, some pieces on that offensive line, and really kind of hit the ground running and be successful. I think his playoff run and kind of run towards the end of the season here has really kind of picked up some of the hype on him as well. I do think there's a good chance he is that 4th quarterback off the board and potentially a first top half of the first round kind of pick here. I still think he does have some deficiencies. You do have concerns over the injuries and perhaps the age as well, but I really like Penix. I don't think that this would be a horrible pick for the Vikings by any means. Get your quarterback in the future, even if it's a little bit earlier than I have him graded. Sometimes you got to take that swing on the quarterback position, and I don't mind doing it on Michael Penix here at number 11. For the Denver Broncos, up next, going to go with Laiatu Latu out of UCLA. I think by far the most polished and complete pass rusher in this class. Just has a wide assortment of moves he can win, both kind of from a 5-tech position. He can also win out wide. He can bend the corner, win with a variety of different inside counters, outside moves. He just has the complete package. He's a plus run defender, I think, as well. I think that, really if he didn't have his injury concerns and maybe was a slightly above average athlete for his size and everything, I think he's an average athlete, and he did have to medically retire. So that's why he's not a consensus top 10 pick. But I still think that Latu would be a great pick for this Broncos defense. I still think that they've gotten some decent production out of Baron Brown and Cooper as well, but you need a true alpha number one edge rusher, and I think that Latu could absolutely be that player. I don't think you can take the fifth quarterback off the board at pick number 12. I don't think there's anybody deserving of that, so I'm going to go with Latu at number 12. That leaves the Vegas Raiders at number 13. Going to go with Jer'Zhan Newton out of Illinois. Continue to add to that defensive front. You've really needed help at that defensive line position for a couple of years. You obviously have Max Crosby. You drafted Tyree Wilson. Get an interior player as well. Jer'Zhan Newton is by far the best interior player in this class, so I definitely think he's going to be a hot commodity and somebody that the Raiders would be really happy with coming away at number 13. And they need to beef up that middle of the defense, and Newton would be a great first step in doing so. At number 14, the New Orleans Saints, going to go with Jared Verse out of Florida State. Verse had a little bit of a kind of quieter season this year and then really turned it on late. He just plays with such powerful hands. He's a really good power rusher, but he plays with a lot of understanding and intelligence. He was a transfer from Albany College that made it to Florida State and really has kind of turned into a great college prospect, and I think he's going to be a very good pro as well. So I really like Verse. He kind of fits that little bit bigger end type of prototype that the Saints do typically like. They need to get much better on that pass rush and on that defense. So I think that makes a lot of sense for the Saints to take him there. Then we're going to go with Brock Bowers for the Colts at number 15. Bowers is really hard to kind of figure out where he's going to go. He's a top 5 talent in this class, in my opinion. I think he's the best tight end prospect I've ever scouted. That includes Kyle Pitts and all of the guys kind of around there as well. But I just think that it's going to be tough with all of the talent at wide receiver, quarterback, defensive end, all of those really key important positions. I think Bowers could slide down the board just a little bit. And I think that Anthony Richardson could really benefit from having somebody like Bowers on his offense. You already have some decent receivers in Michael Pittman, Alec Pierce, Josh Downs. I like a lot of those guys. You add another player over the middle of the field that Richardson could really use to attack. I think Mo Alley Cox is fine, but he's probably more suited to be a tight end too, and Bowers really comes in and becomes a great receiving option, and I think he's a very good blocker as well for this Colts team. I think that makes a lot of sense. At number 16 for the Seahawks, going to go with Cooper DeJean out of Iowa. DeJean can fill a couple of different roles on the Seahawks team. He can play corner, no doubt about it. He can certainly play outside corner if Rick Woolen or Devin Witherspoon go out with an injury, something like that. He can absolutely step in and be an outside corner. I think he is plenty good for that. He can play in the slot and be effective in that role, but I really think that kind of for the Seahawks, he would be a great safety from day one. They can certainly start to move on from Quandre Diggs, Jamal Adams as well. Both of them really are getting expensive and old and not as effective as they once were. So I think DeJean is just a great versatility piece on the back end of this defense as they continue to really kind of revamp that defense and really get back to that Legion of Boom way where it's really tough to play against them. They've continued to add to this secondary the past couple of years, and I think that DeJean would be another great addition, versatile piece that they can move all over that back end. Next, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars. They needed to protect Trevor Lawrence better, missed the playoffs in really disappointing fashion. I'm going to go with JC Latham out of Alabama. He has played right tackle, but I think you can move him really at either the guard spots, play him at right tackle, left tackle if you need him to. You just got to get better up front. You got to get tougher, meaner up front. This guy's huge. He's really hard to get through. You're not going to power rush through JC Latham. And I definitely think that he is somebody that will provide a little bit of extra toughness, extra nastiness to this Jacksonville offensive line that will be desperately needed for them. Then going to go right back to the tackle well for the Cincinnati Bengals. Going to go with Amarius Mims out of Georgia. He's a raw player, somebody that has really, really high potential, but maybe hasn't shown all of his true talent out there just due to injuries, really hasn't been a long-term starter either. So you're really betting on traits here for the Bengals, but Jonah Williams, I would say, is potentially likely to walk this offseason at right tackle. You need to continue to protect Joe Burrow. He's the most important piece to this franchise, and he has missed far too many games. So going to go with Amarius Mims to help protect Burrow and get that running game going a little bit more for the Bengals as well. Then at number 19 for the Packers, going to go with Nate Wiggins out of Clemson. Jair Alexander, one of the best corners in the league, but Stokes has not been able to stay healthy, and when he hasn't been super effective, and that other corner 2 spot just hasn't really been a strong suit of this defense. I think Nate Wiggins is potentially the best pure man-to-man corner in this class. He's really good at off coverage, something that right now the Packers do run a lot of off coverage, cover 4, kind of bend but don't break defense under Joe Barry. So I think Wiggins does fit that mold really well and would be a great piece on the back end of this defense for the Packers. Number 20 for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, going to go with Chop Robinson. He's a super, super explosive edge rusher for this team, and PFF is a little bit lower on him, but I think he is definitely going to be somebody that with his athletic testing and some of the explosiveness numbers that he puts up at the combine, he's going to shoot back into the first round where I think he belongs. It's really kind of that late first, early second conversation where I see him, but for the Buccaneers, they need somebody that can get after the quarterback. Joe Tryon Shoyinka really hasn't turned into the player that they hoped he would. You still have Shaq Barrett, but he's certainly getting up there in age. You just need an explosive pass rusher, and I think Chop could absolutely be that guy for them. He's kind of a situational pass rusher right now, but really could develop into a great player for them, explosive athlete off the edge. For the Arizona Cardinals, I think things have fallen really nicely for them. They're going to get Kool-Aid McKinstry out of Alabama. You get Marvin Harrison Jr., you get Kool-Aid McKinstry. Both may be consensus corner and wide receiver 1 on a lot of people's boards. I'm a little bit lower on Kool-Aid than some of the others. He's my cornerback 4 right now, but I really, really like what he can do. He's a really good press man-to-man corner, and I think somebody that Jonathan Gannon would really appreciate within his system. I definitely think you have to improve that secondary, improve that back end of the defense, and Kool-Aid would be a great step in really getting a lot better at minimizing separation, getting in wide receivers' faces, and making it difficult for them to get open for their quarterbacks. I think that's going to be key for this Cardinals defense to really improving and having a much, much better defense next year. Then for the Rams up next, going to go back to the corner well as well. Kamari Lassiter out of Georgia, somebody I am very, very high on. I love his zone instincts. I love his understanding of when to come downhill, when to hit, when to break on the ball. His just reading of quarterback's eyes and wide receivers' routes, and just a great understanding of how to play the cornerback position. For the Rams, you have some pieces for sure. Ahkello Witherspoon has played decently for you, but you need a number 1 dominant corner, and Lassiter could absolutely be that player for them. I think he would be a much-needed addition to that back end. And then we have the Steelers at 23, also going to the corner well. Definitely a run here. Terrion Arnold out of Alabama. He certainly fits their mold. Reminds me a lot of Joey Porter Jr. I think he's a little bit grabby. I think he's not necessarily the best when it comes to just closing down the separation immediately, but if you want somebody to bump and run with a wide receiver, Terrion Arnold is absolutely the guy that you want doing that. He's very physical. He will not kind of give up leverage to those wide receivers, and definitely somebody that the Steelers could use opposite of Joey Porter Jr. For the Miami Dolphins up next, I still think they need to improve the interior of this offensive line. And I'm going to go with Troy Fautanu out of Washington. He may be listed as an offensive tackle here in the system. He is. I think he's most likely going to play guard at the next level, but he provides that 5-position versatility on the offensive line that I think is super critical. You know that you're probably not getting Teron Armstead for a full season. There's been a lot of question marks. Right tackle with Austin Jackson. Can he maintain the form he played with this year? The interior of the offensive line, is Connor Williams back? All of those kind of question marks I think can somewhat be answered with Troy Fautanu just plugging in really at any of the 5 spots on the offensive line. Providing that depth I think would be huge for them. Then for the Philadelphia Eagles, going to go with Bralen Trice out of Washington. I think that they can continue to add to this edge rush room. I definitely think that they have pieces here, but that's just what Howie Roseman does. He provides a little bit more of that power profile, maybe Brandon Graham, maybe kind of out the door at this point, and Bralen Trice could certainly fill that role very, very effectively for them. For the Kansas City Chiefs up next, you most certainly have to attack the wide receiver position. It just simply has not been good enough. Going to go with Troy Franklin out of Oregon. He's kind of that burner. He is somebody that can certainly be in a vertical offense, attack downfield, and really be effective on those type of routes. I think he can run off script, and that's something that is very important for Patrick Mahomes as well. So Rashee Rice has looked decent for them. Go ahead and get Troy Franklin, and I definitely think that would be a big, big improvement over some of the guys they have currently in that wide receiver room. That leaves pick 27 now for the Houston Texans. Going to go with Graham Barton out of Duke. He is also one of those guys that has a ton of positional versatility. I think that the Texans need to fully invest in really making sure that CJ Stroud has everything around him that he needs. Nico Collins has turned into a dominant, number one wide receiver, really. I'd say he's been a top 15 receiver this past year, and I wouldn't hesitate putting him in that category by any means. You've also got some other playmakers there. Tank Dell, once he gets back from injury, is a huge piece as well. So I think the offensive line is where they attack. Barton has the versatility to play. I think either of the guard spots, no doubt about it. He can certainly be an emergency tackle as well. So I definitely think that he just provides a lot of versatility and options for that Houston offensive line. Then for the Detroit Lions at pick number 28, going to go with wide receiver. Going to go with Keon Coleman, and PFF is a little bit lower on Coleman as well, but he just has insane contested catch ability, and just that ability to go up and make big plays at the catch point is so huge for them. They already have a couple of other weapons. You got Sam Laporta to be kind of that underneath yak guy. You have Amon-Ra St. Brown as the true route runner type in the slot. Go get a big physical red zone threat in Keon Coleman that can go up and make plays for your offense in the red zone in deep contested catch situations. I definitely think Coleman could be a really, really nice pick for them as a complementary piece to that passing game for Jared Goff. Then at 29 for the Buffalo Bills, going to go with Brian Thomas Jr. I think he would really fill the role of Gabe Davis that they've been wanting him to fill for many, many years, and he just cannot do it consistently. It's that big-bodied, kind of long, lanky Z-type receiver where he's just that true downfield threat, the field stretcher with speed that has some physicality, some good releases. I definitely think Brian Thomas could be that type of player for this Bills offense. You get him and Stephon Diggs. You had some nice plays with Dalton Kincaid over the middle of the field. You've got kind of a complete passing attack at that point for this Buffalo Bills team. I think he would be a perfect fit into their system. At number 30 for the Dallas Cowboys, they need offensive line help. I'm going to go with Patrick Paul out of Houston. I think that you really could take a multitude of different tackles, but Paul has just really ridiculous length. He has solid athleticism for that. There's just a lot of uncertainty on the offensive line, and I think that's been the biggest issue of this offense this year. I think you take your pick of the offensive line, and Paul, I definitely could see somebody that they would be interested in just with that size and athleticism combination. Going to go back to the offensive line, well, for the San Francisco 49ers, Jordan Morgan, somebody else that, may need to switch into guard. We'll see. I don't think he has necessarily super long arms, but he is pretty good with his movement skills. He's a decent run blocker. He can mirror pretty well in pass protection and uses his hands relatively effectively as well. So I think Morgan could certainly help that 49ers offensive line, which I think is an underrated need for them. They definitely need to address that spot, and I think Morgan could be a big versatile piece for them. And then we have the Ravens at pick 32. I think they can continue to add to the pass rush. I know that they have a ton of sacks this year. We'll see if Clowney's back, but I think Chris Braswell out of Alabama could be a really nice piece for them as well. He's kind of got that athleticism, that burst, the ability to attack the outside corner and be an effective piece for them. I definitely think the Ravens could use that and really kind of bolster that pass rush for next season. That is going to do it for my 2024 NFL mock draft with the finalized draft order for the non-playoff teams. Let me know what you think down below. Who do you want your favorite team to take? Who are you most excited for your team to draft when the 2024 NFL draft comes up this year? Let me know in the comments down below. If you like this kind of content, please hit that subscribe button down below. While you're down there, hit the like button as well. Truly helps me out. lets me know that you like these kind of videos, want to see more NFL draft content, and pushes it out to other NFL draft fans just like you. Thank you so much for watching. I will catch you in the next one.